Well, good evening. Welcome to Building the Field of Dreams. Tonight, coming to you live from the house of Ray Kinsella here at the Field of Dreams movie site. I'm Tom Chesney, Clark University's 16th president, and I get the best and easiest job in the house tonight. I get to host and spend time with Sue Riedel, class of 1968, who you're going to find out had some really special stories to tell about what happened here and why and how it happened here. So we're glad to have you joining us, whether it's live tonight, several hundred that have pre-signed up. Great to have you here. If you are watching live, you'll want to put your questions into the chat as we go so we can answer some of those. I've got some prepared questions, but we know you'll have some too as it relates to what you hear. Let me take a moment and get right to who Sue is, a little bit of her background, and then we'll start from there. As I mentioned, a 1968 graduate of Clark. She studied drama and speech while she attended, and then had 38 years of teaching. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Theater at Hempstead High School right there in Dubuque. In 1995, Sue earned Clark University's Distinguished Alumni Award in the category of Outstanding Achievement for distinction in her field and her dedication to her work with students and the local arts. Locally, she founded Barn Community Theater in 1972, where she was manager and artistic director of the Grand Opera House from 1986 to 2001. Since 2014, she's been the artistic and theater manager for Bell Tower Theater. And we're so glad Bell Tower Theater is back to having a full season as we emerge from this pandemic. Also here in Dubuque. They're having their 19th season this year. Sue serves on the Dubuque Arts and Cultural Commission as a former member of the Iowa Arts Council Board of Directors, and has been credited with being one of the most influential people in northeastern Iowa for bringing filmmakers to Iowa, and has helped bring numerous movies to Dubuque, including Miles from Home, Take This Job and Shove It, and of course, why we're here tonight, the Academy Award-nominated film, Field of Dreams. Welcome, Sue Riedel.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here and back in the house.
It seems a little familiar to us.
Oh, it does. The spirits are with us tonight.
All right, that's terrific. Well, it's a Clark event, so we can start there for just a moment. Tell us how you found Clark, or Clark found you, and a little bit of your Clark experience that ultimately led to the rest of your story we'll hear tonight.
Well, I'm from Davenport, Iowa, and I went to Assumption High School in Davenport. And the principal at Assumption, Sister Ann Esther, said, I think you should go to Clark College. And I said, I think I want to go to the University of Iowa. And she kept saying, I think you should go to Clark College. It'd be really a good fit for you. So I came to Clark and I auditioned and for the drama department. And I really was happy there. I really liked it there. I also read an article in a magazine that Sister Xavier had taken a group on a USO tour. And so I thought, gee, that'd be great. I'd like to go on a USO tour and go to college too. So I chose Clark, and I really enjoyed my time at Clark. And I got to go on a USO tour on Coffee House Theater. So I lucked out, and I auditioned for that, and I did get to go.
Do you remember where the tour took you to?
Yes, we went to Greenland, Iceland, Newfoundland, Labrador, Scotland, Ireland, and London. So I went halfway around the world, singing and dancing and doing improvs.
And when you talk about your theater experience at Clark, are there shows or memories that stand out with some of your classmates and some of the faculty?
Well, I had a wonderful experience with Sister Xavier, Sister Carol Blitchen, Sister Jeremy then, but Therese Mackin. So I had wonderful professors, and we did wonderful shows. And Coffee House was kind of the highlight of my college career. I was the company manager, as well as being in the shows and doing things. And so that was a wonderful experience. And that group was really a close-knit group of talented young women. And we had two gentlemen from Loras College that also went with the tour.
Are you in touch with some of your classmates still from then?
We had a reunion. We had a 25 reunion, and most of them came back. And I still, thanks to Facebook and the internet, we still keep in touch. And so, and Karen, who was also in the group with me, it's her birthday today. So I sent her a message for her birthday. So it was a wonderful experience going to Clark. And I had lots of opportunities at Clark, which was really good too. I got to direct. I also taught classes on Saturdays for kids in the community. And I ended up getting my teaching degree, which was thanks to Clark also. Also, we were exposed to so many cultural events at Clark. And I got to take art, and I got to take music, and I had all these drama classes, obviously. But we also had wonderful events at Clark that we could take advantage of.
That's good. Continuing to this day, we've got Almost Maine, a play that's coming up very, very soon. And what you say about that small size has been sustained as well. Students get a lot of exposure to a lot of different roles, front of stage, backstage, and getting connected to the community.
Well, that was really important because as a teacher and as a director in the community and doing community theater, you had to learn to do sets and lights and costumes and not just acting. And also I got a good experience of directing also. Even at Clark, I went over to one of the schools and directed a show for them while I was a student at Clark. The nuns would give me bus tokens so I could go back and forth.
That's terrific. That, again, sounds very Clark-like, looking out for each other, caring for each other.
Right.
I touched in your bio about teaching and your rich teaching history there. Tell us how that came about. Education department, still a real strong suit for us. What did it mean for you and your career in terms of that?
Well, it started out, when I was at Clark, there weren't teaching jobs. I'd done my student teaching, but there were so many teachers at that time, and I couldn't get a teaching job. So Dick Slattery from the recreation department was looking for somebody to be the fine arts supervisor for the city of Dubuque, and they were going to renovate a barn and move a barn to Flora Park. And so he was looking for somebody that had worked in recreation, and I had done that in the Quad Cities. So I went over and interviewed with him, and he hired me. So while I was a senior, I worked part-time at the recreation department, and then after I graduated, I became the fine arts supervisor for the city of Dubuque, and I renovated a little red barn at Flora Park, and I had the opportunity to start a community theater because there wasn't one in Dubuque. And I also had an art gallery there with the Dubuque Art Association, and we had art classes and drama classes, and we had a youth Up With People met there, and so I created an art center out of a barn, and that barn was at where Hempstead High School is today. So that barn moved down Pennsylvania Avenue and went to Flora Park and was renovated, and they built Hempstead High School. Well, I also created a program that brought kids to cultural events during the school day, and I got a federal grant for that. And my boss said, I'd like you just to write federal grants. And I said, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to work with people. So I called the principal at Hempstead High School and asked him if he needed a teacher. And he said, yeah, I just had a teacher quit. He's going to go to law school. Can you teach speech and theater? And I said, oh, yeah, that's my major. And I had his two boys in my drama classes at the theater, and so we talked, and I went back to work. It was my lunch hour, and I went back to work, and he said, called me up, and he said, well, if you'd like to come teach, you can start in August. So I went in and quit that job, and I went to teach at Hempstead High School, and that's where the barn had moved from. So it was kind of interesting how that went full circle.
A little bit of a full circle.
Right.
Sure.
So I was at Hempstead for 38 years. I loved it there, and I was in the same room at the same school teaching the same subjects for 38 years.
Wow, tremendous legacy that you left.
Thanks, and I still kept teaching, I still kept directing plays in the community, so I had the best of both worlds.
Was that, we sometimes think of, teachers doing, having that second life during the summers. Was that part of yours, like summer stock theater or theater work?
No, I did it all year long.
Okay.
I taught at school, and I'd leave school, and then I would direct plays in the evenings, and so I did both at the same time.
Where does film then find its way into this? Some of those those connecting points.
Well, filmmakers, the Field of Dreams. What happened is I first had done some other films. I did Take This Job and Shove It and Miles from Home. And when I did those films, I got the experience of doing that. And they came to town, and they called the Chamber of Commerce, and they were looking for somebody who knew something about theater and knew about actors, and so I was handy. Mm-hmm. And so they would then hire me to do the location casting for the various films because I knew about actors in the area. And then Field of Dreams, by that time, I had been on the volunteered at the Iowa Film Office in Des Moines, and I also was on the film office in Dubuque, so I was a volunteer. So if films would be interested in the area, we would work with them and try and find them locations, because it really brings a lot of money into a community. The economic impact's wonderful if a film company comes to your town. So I was just in the right place at the right time.
So, right place at the right time. Lansing Farm becomes the right site at the right time. Let's really kind of begin to unpack that. Did you know this space when you heard the film was looking for something like this? How did it come to be that we find ourselves here now in this historic place?
Well, Wendell Jarvis from the Iowa Film Office, and I was one of his volunteers, called me up and said that there's a film looking for a farm in Iowa, and they're looking for a white clapboard house. They would want, it has a porch on it and a fence around it and a long lane leading up to the house. It should have enough land around it to build a baseball field, and it should be surrounded by corn. And so would you look for some farms and take some pictures and send them to me? So I had a cheapy camera, and I drove up and down all the countryside here and took lots of pictures, and I probably had 50 farms or maybe more. And I came up over the hill here, and this farm looked perfect. I had gone to the library and checked out the book Shoeless Joe. And in the book, they describe what it looks like. And I had that in my car. And when I came over the hill, I saw this farm. I went, wow. And it was sitting all by itself. And it seemed to fit what the book was asking for. So I took a picture of this farm. And in fact, I walked on the farmland. And I took a picture of the house. And I took a picture of everything. And I knocked on the door. Nobody was home. And I thought, well, I'll just take the pictures and who knows what'll happen. So I sent in the pictures along with 50 other pictures. And you might know the film company wanted to see this particular farm. So then I had to go back and explain that I'd sent the picture of this house and this farm into Universal Studios. They might like to come here and talk about making a movie. And so I came back to Dyersville, and I couldn't remember where the farm was.
Oh.
I had lost it. I drove around and I couldn't find it. But I had the pictures. So I had my pictures, and this was the pictures. And I went to the Chamber of Commerce, and I said, I took pictures of this farm, and I'm trying to find it again because they'd be interested. There's a company interested in this particular farm. They said, oh, that's Don Lansing's farm. I said, can you tell me where it's located? And so they gave me the directions, and sure enough, I got here, and it was the place. And so then I knocked on the door, and Don Lansing was home this time. And I said, hi, I'm Sue Riedel, and I'm a volunteer, and I'm taking pictures of farms. And I had sent your farm into Universal Studios, and they might be interested in coming here and making a movie. Would you be willing to talk to them? And he said, are you dreaming? I said, now let me go through this again. So I explained it to him again, and he said, well, do I have anything to lose? I said, no, I just want you to talk with them, but they might like to use your property and your house, and would you be willing to talk to them? And I said, it's a baseball film, and he liked baseball. And I said, you have enough land that they were thinking about building a baseball field on it also. So I said, well, I'll talk to him. Will you be here? And I said, I'll be here. Trust me, I'll be here. So that's how that started. And so they were interested in this. But they also were interested in other farms, and they were also interested in Canada because you can do a film cheaper in Canada than you can here. So Wendell Jarvis from the Iowa Film Office, Rob Apple from the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce, and myself went to Los Angeles to Universal Studios to try and persuade them to come to Iowa and do this film. And when we were there, we had pictures of different farms, and they would ask us about different farms in our area. And all of a sudden, I'd say, well, I think you should go to this farm. It really looks like what it should be. I said, it's an Iowa farm. It looks like what the story says it should be. I think you should go here. Well, then they went through some other farms and looked at other farms. And then I said, I really think you should go to this farm. Finally, the executive said, I think we should just go to Sue's farm. And so,
Wow.
and we did tell them that we didn't, a lot of cities give films makers money. We had no incentives that way. Our incentive was a DOT building that was down by the bridge, and it was going to be torn down, but we would keep it, and they could use that whole facility for their offices and for, we'd give it to them free of charge. Also, we could have rain cover sets in there, and they could also have various build sets and various things there. So that was the only incentive that we had. But we had the right locations. We could be Boston. We could be the roads going to and from Boston. Dyersville could be the farm location. So we had not only the farm, but other locations in the Dubuque and Galena area. So it was really a project with 3 communities working together that sold this. Dyersville, the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce, and Galena. And everybody working together made it happen.
So first thought for some of our audience members might be, they recognize the house, they recognize the field and what you've shared in Dyersville. Are there other locations that might be familiar to those who know Dubuque or Galena that are still somewhat similar today, or have things changed unlike what's been sustained here?
Well, Lower Main Street in Dubuque was filmed. In fact, we filmed there at night, and that's in the film. Galena, there's lots of when you saw the movie theater and you saw Burt Lancaster walk down the street, that was all Galena, and all the cars we got cars, and they have period license plates, but that was Galena. A lot of people wouldn't know, but the road from Dubuque to Galena was Boston, and people that when they do that various traveling scenes, that's from Dubuque to Galena. Five Flags was when they filmed in Boston and they did the stadium, and a lot of people wouldn't know this, but the inside of Five Flags was used for some of the scenes in the stadium. The
stadium seating inside Five Flags
was used for the stadium seating in Boston. So they did some of the shots in Boston, and then I had to find people that were sitting behind James Earl Jones and Ray Kinsella, and I had to find people that looked like the people that they filmed in Boston and had the same clothes on, but that was really filmed in Dubuque.
Wow.
So that's a secret you probably didn't know.
That's kind of a sweet reveal for us.
Another neat scene was Henrik's Feed Store, which is downtown Dubuque, and that was all filmed in there. So there were a lot of, so that was what was great about this area. We had so many different options open to them.
So you're in LA. You've obviously made the deal, so to speak. Walk us through some of the process that comes from that. So the site's chosen. There's a lot that goes into production of a film.
Well, when we left there, we all had a headache because it was a long day. But when we left there,
we good kind of headache, though, right?
Right.
Okay.
We knew they were going to come to Iowa, but when the film company hits your community, it's really interesting. Now, I was just helped to get the movie here, but Brian Frankish, who was the executive producer, also hired me to do location casting and also to take care of extras and small speaking roles. And he was, and I also was kind of like his girl Friday to whatever he needed. He would call me. And my nickname was Batgirl because I had to take the guys to baseball practice every day. I also held auditions for the baseball players in the film. All the ball players that you see in the film came from all over, and they actually tried out, and we had an audition, and Don Buford from the Baltimore Orioles and Rod Dato from USC ran the auditions for these ball players to play all the various positions, and then when they were selected by them, then every day I had to, early in the morning, we'd go to McAleese Field, and we'd have baseball practice. So I'd go with the guys to baseball practice every morning, and they could really play ball in the movie, which was, but that was one of my jobs. And then Brian said, you know, this will be the easiest job that you've ever had, just a few people. Well, the first day I had a PTA meeting with 500 people, and then it went on from there. And then I was in charge of the last shot of the movie, which was 1,500 cars and 3,000 people. And so I had to set all of that up. So that meant that I had to work with the fire department, and I had to get porta potties, and had to arrange for a picnic at Commercial Club Park beforehand. And so there was a lot going on in preparation of all the various things. And that's what's really, people in California thought the last shot was electronic, but that was all real people.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. There's stories written about that anyone seeing the film today, and it's timeless, and a lot of people watch it, you know, in advance of or because of the game. We'll come and talk to that in a little bit as well. But the expectation today would be, oh, that's CGI, or that's somehow special effects or something like that. That's not even close to the story. You just said a little bit about 1,500 cars. Tell us a little bit more about how that scene actually comes together, because that's what we remember as we leave the film.
Well, what's interesting about that is that, first off, I was in charge of that, and there was a gentleman, that one of the executives thought that there was this girl in Iowa that was in charge of it, and I was really going to make a mess of it. And the producer called me and he said, do you think you can really do this? And I said, yeah, I think I can if you'll help me. And what we had to do to get that, we put an ad in the newspaper, and you could apply to be in the last shot of the movie. And then you would send that in, and we sent you a ticket, and that was the only way that you could get on the road that particular night. We also, all the directions that particular night were done over 2 radio stations. We had an FM and an AM station. And so when you would turn on your radio, and you would get directions of what to do in the last shot of the movie. So what happened is, people could only get on those roads that particular night. So we had everybody gather at Commercial Club Park. We had a big picnic, and we had hot dogs and peanuts and and soda and everything for everyone. And then when it came time for you to be in the last shot, you had your ticket, you had gotten into the road, you then would get on a certain highway. And so there were A cars, B cars, C cars, and D cars, and that you put that in your window, and that said where you were going to be in the last shot of the movie. And then there was a helicopter that went up and took the picture of the field and then all the cars. So the director would say, all right, everybody, A cars on road 1, B cars, C cars, and so forth. And I drove around in my little go-kart looking up and down, seeing where all the cars were. We also had food trucks that went along the way that gave people water and various things. So it was the biggest tailgate party in the history of Iowa on that particular night. So there were 3,000 people. There were 1,500 cars. They went from the lane down from the farm all the way back to town, all the way down to the quarry, and also behind there were cars. So everywhere in this area, all you could see were those cars. Also, there were no ball games going on that night. I had to contact all the area to be sure there were no baseball games going on. So the only game you could see was the one on this field. And so when the helicopter went up, that's all that you could see. So you turn on your car radio, and you got directions from the director. All right, we're going to move now. And then the cars would move towards the house. Then we'd stop the take, and then all the cars would back up. And we'd do it again, and we did it 3 times because everybody cooperated. So there were no accidents, and everybody did a good job. And then we also gave away prizes that night, and you could pick them up at a convenience store on your way out of town. And also James Earl Jones and the actors would talk over the radio stations to the people in the cars, so there was some entertainment in between takes. And that's another thing in California. They could not believe that you got 2 radio stations to cooperate, an AM and an FM, that would do such a thing. That's unheard of. No. And that many people would volunteer their time to be in the last shot of the movie. And you got a button that said you were in the last shot.
Wow. But anyone who still possesses one of those buttons is hanging on to that or passing that down.
Yes, I have one.
Their family. I mean, what it seems like a classic example of what we sometimes say. Iowa Nice, people getting together to do something good. Mm-hmm. Do you remember how long that night spanned? I mean, how many hours were people committed to?
Oh, we met about 3, 4 o'clock and went till 9 o'clock about at night. And the shot that you see in the movie is the last shot because the car lights would show up the best. Mm-hmm. And so that's the one that you see.
And you said you were moving up and down the lines for part of that.
I had a driver
Yep.
in a go-kart, and they would drive me around, so I would make sure everything was running correctly and that everyone was, that it was doing what the director wanted done and that type of thing. And then we had practical things. You had to hide porta potties behind trees, and you had to make sure that everybody was all right. And the only accident that we had that night was the executive producer was going too fast on his go-kart, and he rolled it into the ditch because he wasn't used to driving on gravel roads, but he didn't get hurt.
Not a lot of gravel roads in the LA area.
Yeah, right.
Do you remember where were you yourself then during those 3 takes? Did you have to pull off or were you someplace specific each time?
No, each time I had to be out of sight,
right.
So I wouldn't be in the shot. So I had to either go behind a tree or be out. Then I had a driver that would get me out of the shot, or the director would tell me, "You're in the shot, Sue, move." And my nickname was the Bat Girl because I always had. I took everybody to baseball practice, yep. So they would refer to me as Bat Girl, get out of the way.
Bat Girl, get out of the way. So, going back to that time, kind of in the moment, is it even possible to think, as that's happening, what that might become? I mean, you've had that theatrical experience, you had previous film experience. In the moment, as you're hiding off to wherever it was to not be in the shot, mm-hmm. Is there any way of capturing that and thinking, I think this is going to be something? Is there any emotion attached to that? Or are you just doing your job?
I think I thought it was, that whole night was unbelievable. That many people, and everyone was so cooperative and they all wanted to be in a movie. But when the whole film wrapped, we all knew we'd made a good product. There was something about the whole product and the actors and the producers and everyone that they wanted to make a good story. And the director wanted to make the perfect film. Phil Alden Robinson really was dedicated to making a really good art piece, a really good film, and it proved to be so. And we kind of walked away thinking, that was a good film. Did I think we'd still be talking about it today? No. I mean, this is 30 years later, and I'm still telling stories about this. But the quality of the people, James Earl Jones, for example, I was working with him on the set, and I said, Mr. Jones, can I get you a cup of coffee? And he said, no, just sit down, and I want to talk to you, and we talk about theater. They were really quality people. And then he was he got all excited when Burt Lancaster came to do his scene. James Earl Jones ran to his trailer to get a camera to take a picture of Old Hollywood, Mr. Yeah. Old Hollywood. So the respect for everybody, all the talent on the sets. And the night of the Academy Awards, I called Phil Alden Robinson to congratulate him. And, good luck tonight. We're all watching. We have a watch party. We're watching you. And I left a message on his answering machine. And a few minutes later, he called me back and said, I can't believe you're calling me. I just wanted to leave you a message. He said, I wouldn't be going to the Academy Awards if it hadn't been for people like you.
All starts here.
Yeah, what a great man, you know.
So I'll remind our audience members, if you're watching live, post your questions in the chat. So I'm going to ask one that's come in already. you remember if any locals who were extras in the movie were paid or earned royalties? Or maybe do you even remember some specific locals that we might know of?
Well, there were, yeah, people got small speaking roles, and they were paid SAG scale.
Okay.
And extras in the film got a paid each day that they worked. Like if they worked a day, they'd get cash. And so I would run around with money, like $40 in packets, and if I had 500 people, I'd be paying out that money at the end of the day. So and I had to account for all of that money that was given. So we did pay them in cash, and they had a voucher, and then you got cash for being in the film.
So you're a Batgirl and banker.
I was a Batgirl and banker. Yeah, sometimes I had lots of money that I was hauling around. And I had in my trunk of my car, I had all the files of all the various people, because I had to have records of everybody. So my car was one big office. And but I also had to pay out the, I also would pay for people if we used your car. We give you money for using your car and that type of thing. Nobody got rich on it, but now some of the people did get speaking roles, and then they would get residuals as a result of that also. But I know Mary Gershon, she's passed away now, but she had a speaking role, and she was getting residuals for years after that, the film. Every time it was shown, she would get a residual.
And when film was finished, how long was it before you had a chance to screen it, or were you seeing it for the first time like others did? How did you first experience the film?
We had a premiere here, and that was another job. And I worked with the chamber. We had a new chamber director, and that was his first job when he got here, to work on the premiere. And we had a premiere night to see the film. And we had at that time it was a theater that had several screening rooms. There were several screens in one facility, and so we'd have a little ceremony in each, and then they'd start that film, and then we'd go to the next one, and we'd introduce the film. They'd go to the next one, and I saw it that night in one of the screens here in Dubuque. That was the first I saw it.
Memories from that premiere?
Yeah, and I got to MC that and introduce Brian Frankish came back for that, and Rod Dado was here. Rod Dado was the winningest baseball coach in collegiate history at USC, and he was the baseball coach. Don Buford came back for it, and and we had this premiere night with introducing those people, and Brian Frankish spoke to the audience at each premiere, and then we'd go to the next one. So we really had 5 premieres in one night, and then we had a party afterwards at one of the motels.
And what was your experience in responding to the film, seeing it in its finished form?
Well, I also saw things that weren't in the film,
Okay.
of course, and so, but
You tell.
yeah, it was really a wonderful experience to see it all put together. And I've seen it many, many times, and so different things that. Well, I was in a scene that got on the cutting room floor. One night we were filming, and the actress came in to play the scene, and the director looked at her and thought, she doesn't look right for the scene, because she doesn't look like she's from Iowa, at all. And so they said, go find Sue. And I was working and I was filthy, and they said, Sue, go to costume, go to wardrobe right now. I said, what? Just go to wardrobe. So I went to wardrobe, and they dressed me up, and I went in to do the scene. And they told me what the line was, and I said my line, but it never appeared in the film. So it was on the cutting room floor, so I never was in the film. So I went to Los Angeles to visit the executive producer. He took me to Universal Studios, and he opened the drawer at Universal Studios where they have all the still shots, and he pulled out my picture, and he took it and gave it to me, so I have it. So I have,
We just shared
oh,
with
you
the
shared it?
audience
Okay.
as well.
So I have the still shot of I never made it in the movie, but I still have, I know what it would have looked like had I been in the movie.
I want you to take a moment and unfurl that. It's like a panoramic view.
Oh.
That's the original, correct?
Now, I didn't have a very fancy camera, so this is how it all started. So if you, this is what I sent in to Universal Studios. And in those days, cameras weren't very, and I just taped them together, and it was in a file folder. And when this was the very first pictures that they saw of the farm. And because of this, they came here and made Field of Dreams, and they spent about $5 million in the community.
Yeah. They made a great choice and a great bet. So now let's fast forward.
Oh, and I needed to show this. I guess they need to see this. So here it
There we go.
is. You want to hold that for
Yep,
me?
for sure.
Okay, and then,
I've got this one.
all right. They were taped together, but they came on
Yeah.
tape there. It's a lot of years of tape.
Truly a field of dreams because you have to dream about the baseball.
Yes,
At that
and then,
point.
well, it had to have enough land
Yep.
to build a baseball field. They also had to rent the farm next door because they decided, the art department decided that they wanted to position the baseball field in a certain way. And so the Ames Camp Farm also had to be used as well as the Lansing Farm.
Wow. Well, let's talk about the move to the present. A lot happened, a lot of years passed. You told this story many times. Here we are talking about it again because lo and behold, Major League Baseball and others come together and say, let's go back there, and play a game. How did you get engaged with that? How did you even respond when you first heard that was coming together?
Well, I just was in shock that, this all started with these photographs, and then they made a movie here, and 30 years later, we're going to have a major league ball field here and build a baseball field here, and I thought, wow, another baseball field is being built. I was really taken back, and I thought it was really exciting that it's grown and that people still keep coming. I always think it's amazing that people keep coming. They believed in the movie when they said people will come, Ray, people will come, and they've been coming, and they still believe. And I got to go to the game, and I was really excited about that.
I'm gonna hold you to coming back and talking a little
okay.
bit about that story too.
Right.
Two questions from our audience. Kind of the length of time from when you first found Lansing Farm, where we are tonight, until the film wrapped. Kind of give us a sense of how long did that all take? Discovery of the location to wrap of the film.
Well, it's a whole year. And so when we found the farm, and then it took a while to get everything set up, and then they came here, and then I spent I started working on the film while I was at school. So my real job was a school teacher. And so I had to go to my principal and say, I'm going to work on a movie. Is that okay? Can I leave early some days? And so I would teach school, and then I'd go work the film, and then I'd teach, because I had to finish the school year. And it went the whole summer, and then we went back to school, and I was just wrapping the film that summer. So it was a whole entire summer. It was the hottest summer in history. I was sunburned the entire time.
That might tie into our second, or our follow-up question. What was one of the biggest challenges with filming?
Well, one of them was the growing of the corn because it was so hot. So they had to irrigate the land, and also the grass wasn't always going to be green, so they had to paint it to make sure it would stay green. And the irrigation was a big problem, and heat. It was just horrendous how hot it was, and we're playing baseball. And also I had a PTA meeting with 500 people in a school gymnasium, which was really, really warm, and we put fans in there, but those gymnasiums are not air conditioned where we were
They
filming.
still are
No.
in many places.
Right. So, the heat, that was a big challenge. And I think those were the biggest challenges that way. People were pretty cooperative as far as, but even though with, you had to I had to change people's schedule all the time, and they were so good to me. Like I'd call them and say they're supposed to be there tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and then the director or they'd say, oh no, we're going to change that shot. We're going to do it next week. So then I have to call everybody back and then change that and then say, would you come back again, and that type of thing. So, and the other difficulty was matching shots that they had to be in the same clothing, so you had to keep record of what people were wearing so they matched the next time that they came.
That continuity issue.
Continuity.
That's the last thing you want somebody calling out is something like
Well, haven't you been to things and you find a mistake?
all the time.
Yeah, you
All-
look for
all-
that
all
type
the
of thing.
time.
So,
Yep. So let's go back to the Major League game. So ask you, you obviously wanted to go. You signed up for the lottery. Tell us the story of how it unfolded for your experience now, being at the Field of Dreams and the Major League Baseball field. 2 years in the making, because we had it delayed once by the pandemic. Take us through that.
well, I tried everything to get a ticket. I mean, I just wanted to go. I wanted to be complete circle. I was so involved in making of the movie, and now that they're going to do this game, and I grew up playing softball. My dad was my coach, and so baseball was really part of our whole family thing. And I wanted to go, and I tried everything. I called everybody I could think of to try and get a ticket, but I couldn't get a ticket. And so I like many people, I entered the lottery, and I won the chance to buy a ticket or buy 2 tickets to go to the game. And I was so excited that I could go. And so I got to go to the game, and it was a wonderful evening. And when I was there, the man behind me taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Are you Sue Riedel?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I was the first baseman in the movie. Do you remember me?" He was one of my ball players. And then he said, "Oh, yeah. And the catcher that in the film, he's up in front of you." And so he yells at him, and he was one of my ball players in the film. So what are the odds of us sitting that close together at the game? And the man that was the first baseman told me, he said, "I got a little story to tell you." He said, "I got picked to be on the team for the film, and I was so excited." Well, then the schedule changed a little bit, and I worked at a job and I had to go back. Our vacation was over. I went to my boss and I said, "I'm going to play baseball in a movie." And his boss said, "No, you're not. You're coming back to work." And he said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to quit." He quit his job to play baseball in the movie. Later, he said, "But it changed my life." He said, "I was in that movie. I got to be coach. I got a job to coach baseball full time, and I've been doing it for 30 years. So his life job that he really enjoyed doing, had he not have quit one job to be in the movie, he wouldn't have had that wonderful job. And he told me that story.
That's a life-changing moment.
Right. And he said, "I've been so happy." And one of his ball players had brought him to the game. He paid a ticket to bring him to that game that night so he could see it.
Let's play with that same theme. How did it change your life then? What did it bring to what you do? We've walked through your biography. How did it impact or influence what you've done since then? And currently, you're still very active in theater.
Well, I met so many wonderful people as a result, and that I wouldn't have met. I'm still talking. I met you tonight, and we're talking about this. And I've talked to so many different people as a result of that experience. So, little did I know that I would still be talking about this today. But it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm still friends with the executive producer. Brian and I still keep in touch, and we keep thinking maybe we'll find another project to do together again. So I think being working with the film helped me to be a better director, because whenever you work with other directors or you see how things are done, and I always think when in a play, I think, well, we should have atmosphere moving behind the people on stage. So it gave me some other insights into directing, because film and stage is different.
Yeah. Well, Sue, the film doesn't exist, as we've learned and had affirmed time and time again tonight, without you. The site lives on and has this new life and this history because of you as well. And we're joined now by Tucker LaBelle, who's a Clark student as well. He'll be a graduate this spring, who has been able to, through the success of the film, have a position here as an intern. He's part of our Clark Student Association president. Tucker and I get to see each other on a regular basis because of that. I typically learn more from him than I'm sure that he does from me. But early on, I heard the story that he had opportunity to come out here and start something that now has been sustained for a couple of years at least. Tucker, welcome. Tell us a little bit about Field of Dreams, maybe how you came into not only your position, but how you came to know the film these years later, too.
First off, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Tom, and great to see you again, Sue.
Good to see you, too.
Good to be around two great Clarkies. And really, gosh, how I ended up here in the first place is something of a story, and without Sue, it wouldn't have happened. Making the groundwork in the first place. But I had always been a fan of Field of Dreams. I had always loved it. I loved the meaning of it. I come from a very baseball-rich family, so being a lacrosse player is a little bit different. It's unusual, but the Field of Dreams was the first movie I ever remember seeing as a child.
Wow.
And that, you always, whatever it may be, the first movie you see makes a very big impact on your life. It's very profound. And so, when I got the option to come to Clark and I came out here for the first time, of course, me and my family came out here to the Field of Dreams. It was a very icy, snowy day. There was no corn, there was no baseball to be played, but just to be here in the ambiance and the atmosphere was something. And so, fast forward a few months down the road, and I'm back here. Freshman year, it was actually very close to this time that I was assigned to come write an article for the Crux out here. And former Clark professor Emily Goodman loved the idea of me going to the Field of Dreams and documenting it. This was prior to Major League Baseball being announced. This was prior to us having the Baseballism store on site. This was very much in a very different era, 4 years ago, really. And so I came out here and I called up my mom. Didn't know that my mom had become friends with former owner Denise Stillman through their common interests. And so, moms do their work. They do an amazing job connecting their kids to all these opportunities. And so I would say the conversation between my mom and Denise is what led me here in the first place. Denise had said, do you want to potentially try out to be a tour guide? And I love talking, as people at Clark know. I love having a good conversation, and I love storytelling. And this is all very much an aspect of storytelling. So strangely enough, I ended up meeting Denise's husband, Tom Meitzel, at the airport prior to him flying out. He interviews me on the spot. It was a very strange thing. If you were going to make a movie of the entire thing happening, it would have all lined up perfectly, I always say. And on the spot, I get the job. Tom says, okay. I'm emailing back and forth with Denise that she was in bad health prior to her passing. And so we're having all this conversation. And I remember coming out here on the first day, actually, with several other Clark students. I wanted to come out after getting hired and check it out and see what it was like. And so me and 3 Clark students come out here and we start playing baseball, and we meet Director of Operations Roman Weinberg, who's in here somewhere right now. And Roman runs up to us and is all excited, and we become lifelong friends, really, in that sense. And the welcoming aspect on that first day, can be shadowed throughout the entire process from me being here. And on my resume, I remember that interview, I'd put down that I was into social media and digital marketing and visual storytelling. And so, Roman and Tom had said, well, maybe down the road, we'll jump into that maybe after school. And fast forward just a few months after that, I went from tour guide to doing a lot of our social media with Roman and a lot of our digital marketing. And then lo and behold, we get the news that MLB's coming to town not too long after that. And all of it ties together into this strange timing at the right place, much like Sue's story. There's no accident to finding this place. It has a serious legacy to it that draws people in. And so I've been able to share my experience through photos, through videos. I always say I get to connect dreamers in a digital way, whether they're in Australia or Japan. I can snap a picture out here on the porch, I can tweet it out, and 10 seconds later, someone halfway across the globe is seeing it. And so that has really summed up, how I ended up here in the first place. And it's a continual thing that it's constantly giving back. We have a family atmosphere here. We enjoy being around each other, and we enjoy being able to create something for other people to feel happiness from.
Yeah, so Sue shared her story of this summer from getting the chance to be at the game, and a great story there from some of the actors that were part of that. Mm-hmm. All right, you're on this side of the house, though.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the experience of being an employee of the Field of Dreams movie site, what that was like for you.
This summer was a whirlwind. Major League Baseball and the game out here was really just one of our big events, but it was the captivating event. It was the premier event that had been looked forward to for 2 years from then, obviously because of the COVID cancellation, and the anticipation just continued to grew and grew and grew, and it grew into something so massive that everyone was counting the days. And we were here very much as well. We hold baseball tournaments here for youth teams, and all the youth teams coming in were talking about it. The buzz around town was Major League Baseball, Yankees and White Sox, and it was very much as if we ourselves as employees of the field had stepped into a movie. The old line of if you build it, he will come, obviously common change is if you build it, they will come. That's exactly what Major League Baseball was doing here. And that's exactly what they had put into place. And so for us to sit back and see it all take place was something crazy. For me, it was incredible to know this was taking place here because, some of those first drone images, some of those original landscaping images, Yahoo Sports, ESPN, a lot of those images, I was blessed to be the guy on the other side of the camera taking those images. So to see it go from a cornfield to a stadium full of fans and people playing baseball, it was a total full circle experience for me, and it was incredible. I actually had a very different perspective. I was about 2 miles away in downtown Dyersville. I was the media correspondent in town with those very diehard fans watching on the screens, and a very defining moment for me of that night was actually seeing a veteran stand up during the flyover and during the national anthem, and he saluted and then sat back down. And I can remember talking to people later that night and talking to that individual and asking them what this meant to them. And many of these people had grew up in Dyersville. This is their whole lives, and for them, they said this was it. This was the pinnacle of what it would be like to be a Dyersville resident. And so I think my experience was enhanced and made better this summer simply by talking to those people who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into this community, into the farming, into everything. I'm not here without that or without Sue's journey.
So I'm going to ask you both the same question related to that. Kind of a top memory, top takeaway. If we were doing word association and I said Field of Dreams, what's the first thing that comes to mind now for you? Start with you, Sue.
Well, I think people live lives of quiet desperation, and I think that the field gave them this movie. It's like a wonderful life. It withstood time because it gave people hope. A lot of people have desperation in their families, or they have things that they wish they'd have said or could undo, and this film gave them that. And I liked the idea that that people had a film that they believed in, and then the whole fact that people came as a result of seeing that movie, and they still come, and they still keep coming. And so I think the film is a really good product, and it really helped people in a way that they needed it. And people will come here and tell you their story. Don Lansing met his wife here. She was a tourist. And so here's a man who built this field, and he let everybody come into his house, build a ball field on his property. They went away. He kept it going. There was some reason he kept it going, like the character in the movie. He must have believed that, I guess, in the story. His future wife is a tourist, and she's one of the people that comes and they meet and they get married. And so his life changed. And so I think people's lives changed as a result in some way.
That's another beautiful story. Tucker, same question.
I don't know. Sue did a great job there. I think my biggest takeaway, I'm 22 years old. I've spent, nearly 4 years of my life, 3.5 years on this property in Dubuque at Clark. And between Clark and here, I see the Field of Dreams connecting to both and having the same message, and that is to sincerely live every moment of your life to the fullest through accepting everybody. And I think about that because, it's easy to be young and be out of touch with your emotions or be out of touch with other people's feelings. And I came to this property just like I came to Clark, simply a lacrosse player with only aspirations to play lacrosse and, not be in touch with anything else. But between campus and here and the Field of Dreams especially, it brings out a newfound sense of emotional connection that you would never imagine. I can remember on my first day, sitting out here, there was an older lady on the bleachers out here, and it was 7:30 in the morning. It was late fall. It was freezing out there, and I walk out there and I say, "Ma'am, like, how are you? Can I help you? Like, what brought you here?" And she explained to me that she was on a road trip, and it was her final road trip. She had 12 more days to live. She had no family or friends remaining, but she explained to me in that moment the importance of living every moment to the fullest and loving those around you. And that couldn't have echoed anything. That changed me forever. That just like every other moment I encounter here and every other story has changed me forever. And it's taught me to truly love everyone around you and live every moment to the fullest, because those two things are as connected as they could possibly be. So that's the Field of Dreams to me.
Beautifully said. Both of you, thank you so much. Sue, I'm going to come to you kind of for the final word, but take as many words as you wish. I think the film, movie site, the legacy will continue to evolve and change over time. So the question I have for you is, it's likely going to outlive us all. Let's take that as my premise. What's your hope for what's next? What would you hope others after us are experiencing or knowing or learning?
Well, I think we have to field our dreams, and I think this gives people the whole opportunity to field the dreams, and I can see this property is going to continue growing. It didn't go away, and so I'd like to see youth baseball be here. I'd like to see, more games here. I hope more tourists come here, but I hope people take away that, it's family. I used to play catch with my dad, and I always am touched by the people who come here and play catch. And so we don't want to ever forget that simplicity of playing catch with one another, having conversation as we are tonight, and that if we can in some way field other people's dreams, if this image helps them be closer with their family, if it helps them to feel good about themselves, the sense of adventure. And I kind of like the movie too, that he believed. Everybody thought he was crazy. I've been told a lot of times, Sue, you are crazy. Why are you doing that? And I think that it's not so crazy. This wasn't so crazy. And who would think that this would still be here today? See, Don Lansing wasn't so crazy to keep mowing the grass and keeping that ball field. Most movie sets aren't still there after the movie's over. The movie's over, everybody packs up, moves away, and life goes on. This continued on. So I guess for me, I hope it continues on to the next generation, just like the book did. It started out with a book, and Shoeless Joe, and the whole idea of the book was made into a movie, and both are good. So it'll be in our libraries, and this will still be here going.
Seems like a textbook case of life imitating art, and indeed art and life merging. In some way. Well, Tucker, LaBelle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir Riedel, I could sit here for hours. We may need to do a part 2 and a part 3.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Blessed to have you both in my company tonight. As I drove in, it was the fall air is crisp and cool. The World Series ended just a matter of days ago, really. If the Field of Dreams resonates with you, it's a place that you need to visit. So being here tonight, you can sense and feel that. That merging of art and life happens at Clark University. Again, thank you, those of you who were able to join us live tonight. We hope you'll take part in future events that we'll have. I want to thank our institutional advancement staff, our information technology, IT staff behind the scenes, on the other side from us is a whole team that's made this happen for you. If you've enjoyed this and wonder if you've missed anything else, you may have. Go to our page, our alumni page for Clark University, and take a look at our previous events and look forward to those that will come. We'll have another one in the spring with you. And of course, you're always welcome to come into Dubuque, visit Clark, visit the Field of Dreams. You may get to see Tucker himself. Certainly, if you enjoy live theater, you'd want to come and see Sue's productions as well. That's it for us tonight, live from the Field of Dreams movie set here in the house of Ray Kinsella. We hope you will join us again in the future, and we hope you have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.